let's start looking at adding fonts and brushes and working with those in Photoshop. So we're going to create a header of portfolio header. So we're going to go into create new. This is designed for on the web, so we're going to go to the web tab because we know the settings over here will now set up correctly. I'm going to do a width of 600. I'm going to do the height of 200. It's 72 pixels per inch, that's what we need the resolution for on screen, and leave all the other defaults the same. I'm actually going to call this portfolio header. And click on create. So there's my screen, and that's what I want it to look like at the moment. Now the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set a gradient on the background. So we're going to pick two colours, so I'm going to pick my first foreground colour, and I'm going to go and pick a sort of a mauvey kind of colour for me, because that's the kind of person that I am. I'm very much into those kind of colours, so we're going to go from pink to mauve, and I'm then going to come down to where we have got the, so you might see, this is where I am over here at the moment. If I hold this down for a moment, you may have the paint bucket tool selected. Wherever the paint bucket is, click and hold it down, and that will bring you up with the gradient tool. Up in this top hand corner up here, you'll see that there is this little coloured drop down. What you need is the top left hand corner there. That's going to take it from the colours that you have put in. So it's taking my two colours and using that. The other thing is I want a gradient over here that is going to be linear. It's going to go from one colour straight away to another. And at the moment I'm going to just drag from the middle over to the other side. That's the quick refresher. We did that in the first tutorial. So now I've got a coloured background. What I'd like to do now is over in the bottom corner here, I'm going to add a new layer. And what we're going to do is add some text. So we're going to use the text tool. And I'm going to drag over the whole area where I would like the text. I'm going to type in there Crafty, SLH, carriage return, and then portfolio. Okay, and I want to highlight all of the text, so while I'm in that box I can highlight all of that text that's there. And I'm going to play around with the different fonts. I've got lots of different ones that are up here. Now you'll notice that I have got this centered. You might have got yours left justified. You should see this in the toolbar up here. I'm going to make mine centered, and I'm actually going to want to make my font bigger, so I can click in that box here. Just remember I'm actually using a graphic tablet at the moment rather than my mouse, which is why you'll get some extra blocks coming up. So if you do have a graphic tablet, do feel free to have a look and use with one of those and work. So if I use the up arrow key, it's going to make it bigger bit by bit. If I hold the shift down, it's going to jump it in tens. So I've got a large font size here, and I'm going to change the colour so it's going to be a little bit of a darker background there. And I want this a little bit bolder, so I'm going to go and have a little look at some different fonts. Please remember, at home you're going to be able to install fonts really easily. In college we do have a very special way of installing it because the administrator rights restrict us from installing fonts in the normal way. So we will go through that when we're in college and show you how to do that. So let's have a little look at that font at the moment. Now that font looks okay, but there's a big space between the two bits of it. So I'm going to go over and I'm going to double click on the T again to select it all, and this time I'm going to come up to the top screen and I'm going to select this little graphic here, which is the character and paragraph toolbar, and this gives us a nice little palette here with some additional functionality. So again, in here I can change the font and make that go up if I want to. Let me just do that and go up, so that makes the font a bit bigger. Let's take it as big as I can get it. The other thing that you can see over here is we've got two other options. We have now got on the right hand side over here, we have got the this section here, and this is called the leading. Leading, you notice it looks like it says leading, but it's pronounced leading. Leading is the space between the rows. You've then got something below it, which is actually the amount of space between the characters. So that's left and right, so we call it tracking. You may also hear it called kerning. So what I want to do is I want to make these rows at the moment a little bit closer together. Now I've got 72 point there, so if I set it to 72, already that brings it closer. And I can again use my up and down arrow key, so I can make it go closer together. I can even make those actual fonts overlap, which you can see there. Okay, or I can make them just apart from each other. Now the kerning or the tracking It means I can make the text a little bit looser, so the spaces between the characters can be made a lot wider, so spread it out. So I can go right up to 100%, which really spaces this out. Or I can come back and actually start to make it closer together. So this is beginning to make the characters much, much closer to the point where they're virtually touching. And this gives you some really good effects on what you can do with your text. Okay, so there, that looks much, much better. I've done something a little bit unusual to it, and it does make that look good. So what I want to do now is I'm actually going to start to play around with something called brushes, and these are very, very creative. So whichever layer you're on, if you click down on the bottom toolbar and add a new layer, I'm going to drag that layer behind my text. Remember, it's all done in the order of the actual images themselves, so they will stack on top of each other. Now I'm actually going to hide, using that little arrow over here at the moment, this little eye, I'm going to actually hide my text for the moment while I'm working on the background. Now when you work on brushes, don't work on the actual background layer. You'll see here it's called layer 1. Don't work on that one because it's like working with paint. You can't undo what you've done. I'm going to hide this character palette for the moment, and on the left hand side I'm going to come down to what we call the brush tool. So by clicking on the brush tool, it's going to bring me lots of lovely options at the top here, but what I'd like to do is bring out the proper brush palette itself. So up under window, come down to where it says brushes, and this will bring up two lovely little settings here. One, the brush itself, and a little bit more about it, and here we can actually go in and select brushes. And I'm going to drag the bottom of this bar down a little bit so that I've got a little bit more space to have a little look at. So brushes can be like a normal brush. So here you see it's hard and round, it hasn't got any soft edges to it, and you can make brush sizes change either by playing in this box up here and dragging it down and saying okay, that's a smaller brush. But it's very difficult to gauge how big that brush is when you look at it on the actual image that you're creating. So shortcut keys, you've got the square brackets, literally go square bracket left makes it smaller, square bracket right hand side makes it bigger. So it's a quick way for you to resize your brushes. And if I just drag across at the moment, you'll see there whatever my colour is, that is what it's going to use on this background. I'm going to go Control Z, let's change the brush colour a moment, and I'm going to select white for the moment to work with that. So you can see here as I drag across the screen, it's going to draw using that brush. Right, Control Z. Let's look at the soft round brush. Again, if I use this one now, you can see the edges have softened, they're merging into the background. So those are the basic brushes over here in general. What I'd like you to do is have a little look under legacy brushes, and it's really nice in the newer forms of Photoshop. We now actually get folders with the different brushes in them. So we come down to legacy brushes. Underneath there you will find lots and lots of unusual brushes that we have always used in the past with Photoshop. And I'm going to come down right the way to where it says maple leaves. So if I go over the screen at the moment, you'll see, oh, it looks a little bit small. Let me use a square bracket just to make that much, much bigger. Right, so you can see that that's a maple leaf. What I want to do though is go and look at brush settings. So under the brush settings tab, we've got some really unusual different settings here. Now, first thing, let's click on the brush shape, and that shows us exactly what this brush looks like. And I'm just going to drag this spacing over a little bit for me at the moment, just so that I can get a feel for what the actual brush looks like. And I can also change the direction of the brush as well, which is really clever. So for instance, if I go over here at the moment, it's pointing in that direction. If I go over in this direction, it's now pointing over the other side. If I click once, it will create that shape itself. And there are some unusual settings on here. I'll just undo that, make it a bit smaller a moment. We have got lots and lots of weird settings going on here. Now the first one is something called shape dynamics. Now that's what's happening in the bottom here. Let me just turn that off for a moment. I'm going to turn the scattering off for a moment. I'm going to turn the color dynamics off, and the transfer and the smoothing. So I'm not got any settings in here at all. Now if I click on the background, that brush will always stay the same wherever I make a click and actually hit the button on it. Okay, so every time I mouse click, it will draw that shape. Now this is why the brush tip shape's very handy. It allows me to just rotate that brush around and click on the background. Now I've got a couple of different colours here at the moment. What I'd like to do is I'd actually like to turn the colour dynamics on. Now at the moment what it will do is if I drag this, click on it, it should start to change the colours. Just I'll do that for a minute. So foreground, background, jitter. There we go. As we click it, it's changing the colour every time I click. What it's not doing though is it's not allowing me to just draw with the brush. So let's put some shape dynamics and scattering back on. Now as I draw, it will automatically draw other different backgrounds behind it and different shapes, and it will shape dynamic it to create an amazing kind of background here. And depending on what my colours are, so if I go in and let's go and get sort of a very much more autumnal kind of colour, which it would probably down here. There we go, a nice autumnal colour. One, that's the foreground. If I now go to the background and I pick something more down the green range, so we've got a more dark, limey kind of green. Now if I do this, it will actually use those two colours to actually create a very good autumnal feel. Now you'll notice this layer now has got lots and lots of different brushes in it, which is why I like working on brushes on different layers when I'm working with these brushes. So now here we go, I've hidden that back layer. Now as I drag across, you can see there's lots and lots of different shape dynamics that have happened. So within Photoshop there are lots and lots of brushes available to you, but it's much nicer installing your own. I'm just going to hide that layer for the moment and put a new layer in. I'm going to go back and actually reset my colour here and go back to white for a moment. And I'm going to go and change a very, very dark blue for the moment. Okay, my two colours. And you'll see down here there are lots and lots of different brushes available. So I'm going to pick up this swan feathers brush for a moment. And I'm going to click on the first one. Let's go back to the brush settings and have a look at the brush shape. I can't really see what it looks like, but that is what this brush looks like. So if I go over, it gives me an idea roughly. Let's make this a bit smaller. If I now click on the background, there is the brush. And I can go and say, right, actually I'd like a brush in that direction. I'd like another one over here now. So it gives me some control of adding brushes to this background. You may though decide that actually you would like to just use this to actually change the shape. So click on the area, the shape dynamics. We're going to change the sizes. Look below, it shows you what it's doing. It's also going to allow an angle on it. So now if I drag that over, it shows them all changing the angles. Scattering, let's have a look at that one. Do I want it to scatter? Yes, I do. I'd like them to scatter all over the place, please. How many? Oh, that's getting a little bit too busy. We'll just go for the low ones count at the moment. And the count jitter, do I need that? No, let's try that one. Let's go to colour dynamics now. So I would like the hue to change. I would like the saturation to get bigger and also the brightness. Let's show you what happens. I am literally now, let's going to move that over. So use that. As I now click and drag, it is literally just going to drag across the screen and keep drawing lots and lots of different brushes of the feather all the way over that screen with lots of different colours right the way through, giving me a really cool background. We bring back those brushes for a moment. How do we do that? On the top right hand corner over here, you'll see when we're in the brushes tab on the right, you have got the opportunity to import brushes. Now please would you be careful. Please make sure that whenever you use brushes at college, you have them stored on your L drive somewhere and have a brushes folder. You can see I've got mine here now. Also, whatever brushes you download, also make sure you install those at home as well if you've got your own version of Photoshop. If you're going to work with brushes, make sure you've downloaded them. And you'll see here over the years I have managed to get an amazing amount of different brushes. We've got galactic ones there. So if I click on galactic brushes and go load, what this will do is it will actually load them into your listing. There it is at the bottom there. I've got some galactic brushes. Okay, What do those look like? I'm going to hide my layer again over on the right hand side. Let's put a new layer in. Let's pick the colour we've got, and we're going to pick one of these. So the brush settings is really handy, and the brush tip shape, because you can see here it's found them in your list because they don't always go in order. So here, let's have a little look what that galaxy looks like. Make it a bit smaller. We click on there. That is what that galaxy looks like. It could be, let me Control Z a moment. This one looks interesting. That gives you more of a ripple effect. We've got one over here which looks like more like something in the middle of it. So let's have a look at that one. So that is a starry kind of effect. And these are very, very clever ways for you to actually work with your backgrounds to try and create something a little bit more unique and unusual. That was quite a cool one actually. So that could give a really nice overview on your portfolio. So what I want you to do is I want you to experiment now and have a look at how you could create your own portfolio header. Okay, it will be used as well for doing something with your LinkedIn. And I know I've seen some of you before think about possibly putting a little bit of a star on what you've been working on your text. So this is where I'm going to show you a little bit of a cheat. If I put a new layer in above my text, and you'll notice here I've got these little stars. If I make the size of this much, much smaller, okay, and I go over my text, oh, that's not quite, that's too small now. Right, let's make it a little bit bigger. I just need to make that a little bit bigger. So this is where you use the square bracket. So over the top of my eye there, if I now tick on it, it looks like I've got a little bit of a star effect coming out. So these work really, really well. I'm just going to zoom in, Control and plus. And the reason this looks a little bit granulated is because it is for going up on the web, so it won't show this in as great detail. But these can be very handy ways for you adding a little touch of sparkle to what you've been working on. So that is using one of those brushes. So that is under, oh, let's go back in there a moment. If you drag your brushes out, don't worry, just drag them back in again and it'll put them back in there. So this was under, where were we? So that is under one of the lens flare brushes that we've got up there. But have a little play, see what you can do, and make sure you save your work.